Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Rage On podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Dean Freeman, licensed physiotherapist and men's empowerment coach. Today, I have a friend from down under. His name is Ed Scott. He is the owner and founder of My Brain Company out of Melbourne, Australia. And their goal is to help achieve their people's full potential through a happier and healthier brain through prebiotic, gut health, and nootropic formulations. Now, reading about Ed and learning about you, brother, I see that there was a journey to get to this place and why you bring this into the world, helping others. And so that's why I wanted to have you on here. So thanks so much for coming on here, Ed.
Well, Carl, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. So just for those who don't know who you are, and I also am curious to learn a bit about your story, could you just share a bit of backstory about your life, of where you're initially from and where you went to get to where you're at now, running this majorly successful wellness company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was originally born in the UK. I lived there till I was about 13. Interesting childhood, but not in the sense of a hard childhood, just different, I imagine, to what many others would experience growing up. I then moved to Australia with my family when I was about 13, and yeah, I've lived in Australia ever since. I'm currently based in Melbourne. I'm married, got two beautiful kids. A bit challenging at times, and yeah, look, as you say, I run a health company called MyBrainCo. It's a big part of my life. But yeah, prior to that, yeah, I've experienced a bit of darkness. I've had issues with drugs. I've had issues with various different addictions, whether it be sex, porn, drugs. I've suffered with paranoid psychosis, anxiety, panic disorders. But I've managed to come through it all, and it certainly has been a journey, and that journey is ultimately what has led me to have this fascination around the brain, to really want to see what I can do to help people from a nutritional perspective and also from a lifestyle perspective on helping improve the things that helped me through my journey.
Amazing, brother. Amazing. It sounds like you've had quite the journey to get here. And I love how you brought up the piece of darkness, that we all have darkness in our life, especially as men. And I know I've had mine, and I've learned to integrate it into my life. But before we integrate it, we have to understand how we got there. So you've gone through a lot. Could you tell me what it was growing up or in your childhood or adolescence that led you to going through a lot of these struggles in your life?
Yeah, look, yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't know if it's any one thing. I think through life we all have various choices that we make, and sometimes we make the right ones, and sometimes we make the wrong ones. And quite often that can be influenced by the people we have around us in our lives, the friends that we're associating with, the girls or blokes that we're trying to impress. But look, my childhood, I come from I'm very lucky. I come from a very privileged aristocratic background. I certainly didn't go without at all when I grew up. I come from, a strong family bond. My mum and dad are still very much together. I guess sort of my generation, I've got a few years on you. My father was very much the disciplinarian in the family. So he would, I wouldn't see him, to be honest, for much of the year, because he'd leave for work before I got up, and he'd be back after I went to bed. But I think where it was interesting is my childhood. I went to boarding school at a very early age, so it was sort of the done thing. And age 7, I was shipped off to boarding school. Think Hogwarts. I don't know. I'm trying to think of but very military in its approach. And of course, back then it was long before mobile phones or letters. Sorry, the letters was the only form of communication, but long before mobile phones. And so you quite literally got dropped off, and I got brought up by what I now realize was international exchange, or not international exchange students, but basically people on their gap year from Australia. And we would be away from home for 3.5 weeks, with the only communication with our parents being lessons. So I think very early on, you were sort of thrown into that situation of trying to A, fend for yourself, B, fit in. I think that was a big thing, and deal with that sense of, there was definitely a big sense of loneliness that came from that very early on. But whether or not that is driven the negative behavior that then followed, I'm not sure. But I think there was a lot of stuff that happened during those 7 years before I moved to Australia that forced me to, definitely has had an influence on the person I am today. Then, of course, moving to Australia, having gone from a boarding situation, I was thrown into this day school situation, and I'm one of 5 boys. I'm the eldest of 5, and all of a sudden, I've gone from really living a very independent life away from home to suddenly living under the same roof with 4 of my brothers, mum and dad, going to a day school. So there was quite the transition in that. And once again, it's trying to fit in. I came over with a very posh English accent. I certainly wasn't bullied how some kids are, but I think again, you're trying to find your place. You're trying to fit in. You're trying to break into an age group of friends who many of them have been together at school for many years prior to that. You're the posh English guy. I got myself into trouble, and look, I was reasonably intelligent, I think, growing up. So I just finished a scholarship over in the UK. So the thought when I arrived, when I started getting into trouble and playing up, was that, look, we need to challenge him some more. So I ended up skipping a year and ending up being nearly 2 years young for my age group. And in hindsight, terrible, terrible idea. I think that's probably when you look at sort of crucible moments in your life, and then look, I certainly don't hold any ill will towards my parents, but I think that was most definitely one of those decisions that probably sent my life into a real spiral. Only because, I basically, this was the last 2 years of my schooling, and I'm 2 years young, just managed to settle and make some friends and get past the, when do you know if a plane full of Poms has landed, when the engines stop, the whining continues, those sorts of, pommy jokes. But then it really became about trying to fit in socially. I was certainly, you had your friends who were shaving in year 7 sort of thing, and then there was me at the other polar opposite end of the scale. So I really struggled physically, mentally to fit in into that much older age group. And as a result, my work was impacted, everything got impacted from that point. So yeah, I sort of see that as probably a crucible event that, meant I didn't land where I'd anticipated landing off the back of finishing school. And then in turn, as I mentioned before, it probably led me to associate with people that in hindsight, again, were the wrong people to have that a very negative influence on my life.
Yeah, yeah, and I can resonate with the late bloomer I was in life, where I didn't have facial hair. I was short for a while. I was the late bloomer who didn't really shoot up and become 6 feet till, I don't know, 16, 17. And I always felt not strong enough, not big enough, not manly enough compared to a lot of them. So I became that chameleon, often trying to fit different narratives to fit in with the cool kids, the sports kids, the music kids. And I managed that. But I think I also lost myself and what my true values were and what I really stood for, because I was trying to find love in all these different relationships. Do you feel that there was the transition of going to boarding school and then moving to Australia? Was there this feeling that you were lacking love from certain people or certain places? And were you putting on these masks to try and receive love from different people and acceptance?
Absolutely. Look, whether it's love, I think for me, it was trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. Like I think the chameleon is a really good description. Sorry, let me just turn that off. Yeah, I think chameleon is a very interesting description because ultimately, whether it was when I arrived at boarding school, with a trunk in my hand, not knowing a single person, I think you're constantly trying to be what you think everybody else around you wants you to be in order to be liked. And I think, in some respects, some of the skills that, I've learned forcibly through that, and then obviously moving through multiple schools, because I'm afraid I was one of those kids that got thrown out of a couple and ended up in different, but I think they are skills that I've actually grown to use in a positive manner later on in life.
Mhm.
But absolutely, I think to your point, I think yes, it was a challenge. The search to be liked. Use the word love. For me, it was to be liked. It was to fit in. It was to feel like I belonged in whether it was a social circle. I wanted to be one of the cool kids. I wanted to be, yeah, it was a need to be accepted, a need to be liked, and to fit in.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And I know you went through the boarding school route and you came from a more privileged background, as you stated. But even being around the world, I've traveled to many countries, being in Guatemala at the moment, I see kids who are forced to grow up at a young age because they need to help support their family. They're out on the street trying to sell. And although it's hard to see, I also see the benefits in some ways. If you could look at the good of, okay, they're learning how to support themselves and their family and problem solve. Do you feel that those are some of the skills you gained from being able to be pushed out into the world a little quicker, despite some of the trauma that may have come with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I was trying to touch on before. I think, if well, it depends. I don't know if my family would agree with me, but the probably the OCD that I have today is somewhat related to those early days. But yeah, look, the discipline, which I think is a big thing for me in my life, and a big, um, it's one of the cornerstones about how I feel like I've managed to get from where I was to where I am today. But that discipline, a lot of that discipline started very early on. Like we
Mhm.
as 7-year-old would have to polish our shoes, and get them marked off before we were allowed to go upstairs and get ready for bed. The whole way that schooling was operated at that time was very, very strict. Like I used to queue up. I remember my head matron, Miss Bainbridge, probably should mention her name on here. Queuing up and getting the slipper, and getting, because we were the bad naughty kids, the yeah, the dorm captains, like when you consider what a dorm captain was, they were 13 years old. I mean, yeah, would be happy to chat in a room at some stages. But other nights they're on a power trip and you'd be sent out and I'd have to stand in this long corridor with my nose pointed up against the wall. And, they would inevitably fall asleep and forget about me. And I would stand out there often for hours until one of the on-night nurses would see me and send me to bed. But, I think some of those experiences, some of the disciplines that came out of that has very definitely carried forward into my life. I am a neat freak. My kids probably wish that none of that had happened in my life because I'm a bit of a drill master myself at home in trying to keep things organized. But yeah, look, I think discipline and looking for motivation and strength from everything that happens to us in life. If
Mhm.
there's always an opportunity to how we, in my mind, perceive that. Do we allow it to continue to be a negative weight on us, or do we try and see the positive and see how we can utilize it in a positive manner and have it be an asset to us moving forward? So yeah, I'm not sure I've answered your question, but yes, in truth, yes, I think stuff that happened when I was younger during that time has very definitely helped
Mhm.
shape life now.
I love that, man. And the slipper here in Central South America is called a chancla, and
All
the mom will
right.
come after you with the chancla if you mess up. But I totally agree with what you shared, and I could totally understand having that military dad background and getting disciplined. And I feel discipline is something that's missing a lot nowadays. Is in society, a lot of men have softer upbringings, and that's where a lot of men are struggling because they're not getting that discipline. And I want to slightly move forward in your life. Now, you said you were going through a lot of pain and it ended up leading to some addictions, whether that be porn, alcohol, drugs. And most of the time I see people who have addictions, it's because they're trying to simply move away from some sort of pain. I know I struggled with porn and sex and marijuana and alcohol at times. Do you know what the pain was that you were trying to move away from when you were getting into that stage of your life and trying to self-soothe?
It's interesting. I mean, I know that's the reason for a lot of people doing these things. Maybe I just haven't found what that pain is. I wish I could blame it on something, but in many respects, yeah, I don't think it was so much a pain for me as much as it was a fascination in me initially. It was, I met a girl. That's it, outright. I met a girl, and I think I wanted. She was exciting. She was from a very different upbringing in life to what I'd had, and I think there was an excitement to it to me for me initially that probably attracted me to it rather than a pain or wishing to escape something. And yeah, I still I was doing a photo shoot that I met this girl, and she's a lovely girl. We were both going through a different, that sort of younger explorative stages in our life, and it was an immediate attraction, and she'd already been in that clubbing scene, and she'd already dabbled with the party drugs, and I was very much never even thought of taking any of these things. Maybe I'd smoke the occasional marijuana joint at a school party, but that was it. I was very innocent, and I think the discovery of this other part of life was just exciting. But pain is what followed. Pain is
Mm,
what followed, and the lies and the bullshit that you would end up trying to tell yourself to rationalize your behavior. That's the pain. It's the pain that came from the impact in hindsight that I see that it had on my loved ones, my parents, my family. And as a father now, God, I can only imagine. I can't imagine still actually what I put my parents through and how difficult that must have been, and how grateful I am as a human that I had parents that honestly they had every reason just to go, no thanks, but stuck with it. I would spit in their face, not literally, but with every bit of support they offered, and I'd mess up time and time again, but they never gave up. And I think that's the pain. That's the pain. But I now use that pain to help drive and motivate me to do the things that I do today.
beautiful, man. I love that your parents showed up for you, because I know there's a lot of men out there who aren't in a good space, and they are in behaviors that aren't looked upon in a good way. And many people are quick to criticize, call them toxic, and instead of recognize that a lot of these men probably just need love and to be heard in those moments, to know what's going on, because there's a reason for these behaviors, right? And if there's anything I've seen from a lot of people who have found success through business and in life, is that there was a point where they almost lost it all, or they did actually lose it all. And it kind of all fell apart. During this streak of bad behaviors and habits that was kind of putting a reckoning on your life, was there a moment that really was the turnaround, or where everything almost fell apart for you?
Absolutely. I wish it was just one, but there was I'm a slow learner, I've decided in some of these things. Like it was a period of time that was a progressive low point as and look, I got down to 58 kilos. I was using, smoking crystal meth, or as they call it here, the ice barbecue. And I was a mess. I was really, really not in a good place. I had paranoid psychosis. I was suffering, sorry, from paranoid psychosis. I remember walking up and down the side alleys of my house, just in my own head, piecing together this completely fictitious story of paranoia of what I thought someone had done, and finding things in drain pipes and associated. Like, I was a mess. I was a real mess. And, during that time, I sort of, got into trouble as well. There was some law enforcement aspects that came knocking on my door for again, associations more than anything specific that I had done. Yeah, I had a very abusive relationship at that time, not physically, but it was just a toxic relationship between me and the girlfriend I had at the time, who I'm pleased to say has also built a life for herself and is very happy and doing well at this time, which is an interesting little segue. I mean, we'll come back to that later. But yeah, look, I definitely hit a really, really low point where I was sick. I was really, really sick. I ended up going back to my parents and recognizing, that I needed some help, and this was a low point. And I was hit with, severe panic disorder and anxiety. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't function. I didn't know what it was. And I don't know if you were saying, Carl, that you had a military father, but my father, aristocratic, ex-military, not that nowadays he's very different, but back then I think, to his generation and from his background, he didn't understand what panic disorder was. So he just couldn't work out why I wasn't getting out of bed. But I was too afraid to get out of bed. Like I was just literally stuck in a bedroom at their house, crying. I thought if this is what life has to offer me, I don't want it. So yeah, I think that was it was a progressive journey of low points to get to that point, but that was very much the final turning point for me in my life.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you at that time?
I would have been about 23, 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
So
still in the early 20s when you really hit that rock bottom. And
absolutely.
yeah. And so you went back to your parents to get support, and fortunately they took you in. But what really helped you to get out of that deep darkness? Because I know there's men out there listening who are in that right now, maybe not as deep, but something's going on, and they need different options and to see how others got out. How did you get out of that deep darkness you were in?
It was a collective number of things over a period of time, and I'm not going to lie, like it's an ongoing process. I'm every day investing in myself, and I think that's one of the biggest learnings that which come out of all of this is that there is always progress to be made. You never stop learning, you never stop investing in yourself. But for me at that time, I think it was. Sorry, it's not something as I said to you at the start of this, Carl, I'm not normally, this is not something I've opened up or spoken about very often. I mean, it was a very tough period of my life, and I bury it into many respects and use it for my own motivation. But look, I was quite fortunate, I think, in the sense that most people at that point, like me, got thrown into, medical channels. Like I ended up sitting in front of doctors. My parents did the best they thought, all they knew at that point. They basically took me to see a doctor and said, help my son, he's in this bad place. They wanted to prescribe me with all the, benzo and diazepines and, Xanaxes and Valiums and, antidepressants. But perhaps the silver lining for me was that I couldn't take any of those things because of the nature of where my anxiety and panic was coming from and the psychosis. Anything like that I consumed, as soon as I felt it take effect. So as soon as I felt it influence my mental state, it's actually, as strange as it sounds, what triggered my panic attack. I hated feeling anything, I was so protective of my very fragile state of mind in that place that I was able to find and just, sort of hold on to where I felt secure, that anything that felt alien to that, which those sorts of medications, whilst they're very effective for many people, for me, as soon as I felt them take effect, they created that anxiety. So that wasn't an ideal situation. Obviously, you'd love to be able to take a pill and fix things, but it really forced me to look to other avenues. And as silly as it sounds, just getting up and going for a walk. I honestly, that was the first step, and it's baby steps for me. It was a whole lot of baby steps. But first off, it was realizing, okay, this sort of the route of medication, that's not my solution. And in many respects, it's chemicals and drugs that have got me into this position in the first place. So it was an acceptance that I need to find an alternative solution. And for me, it was then taking that first step. It's right, I'm going to get out of bed today. I'm going to get dressed. I'm going to walk around the block. I'm going to put some headphones in my ears. I'm going to listen to some music. And, even if I only get halfway around the block before I have to turn around and run back and, hide back in my, that's what I'm going to do. But every day I'm going to try and do a little bit more. And, getting some sunshine, there were little things. I'm happy to keep talking, Carl, because it was a progression of things, of baby steps of what's next. But ultimately it ended up taking me down to study as a naturopath and to understand nutrition and food as medicine. And obviously it provided me with the foundation that has then gone on to create the passion that I have and the business that I have today.
Amazing, man. Amazing. And I'm super proud of you for getting out of that deep trench, because truth is, a lot of men don't. A lot of men don't make it out. They might still be here on Earth, but they're not here, or they might pass on, unfortunately. And so I'm super proud of you for doing what you did. And I think it's important to note what you did bring up is just those baby steps of literally just getting outside and getting out of bed can make all the difference. I saw a recent study that was done in comparison to antidepressants and other things, that dancing was actually the best form of an antidepressant. And there were so many other active exercises, such as walking, such as meditation, that were way above the effects of antidepressants. And I'm in the US. I don't know how things have been in Australia, but obviously here, we're the only country that gets directly advertised to for pharmaceutical drugs. It's no wonder why we are the country with the highest medicated population and also one of the most depressed. And that's why I love the mission that you're on. And you brought something up too that reminded me of Russell Brand. I follow him a bit, and his story of overcoming alcoholism and some of the things he does nowadays. He said, I do these things not because I love them, but because it keeps me from offing myself. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, that resonates so hard, because that's why I do the things I do. It's just so I don't off myself, and it keeps me on an even keel. So nowadays, what do you do to really keep you on that even keel per se? And do you struggle with temptations or possibly falling back into some of those old ways?
I do, yes. Not as, much easier to manage these days. Like, many years have gone past. And look, that road to recovery is a long road, a really long road. And then it sort of moves from a road of recovery to a road, to your point, of just staying on the right path. And look, for a long time, I continued to dabble with cocaine with friends. It's a very readily accessible drug here in Australia. It's almost socially acceptable whether you're in a corporate circle or whether you're, back in the days when I was partying in clubs. But I think today, having a mission, having a purpose, really helps me stay focused. Having my kids, I think, I'm not suggesting people rush off and have kids as a means of staying on the straight and narrow, but they play a massive part of my life. I think I want to be there for them. I want to create the life that they deserve. They're innocent people in this world, and they deserve the best start in life, and the love and support that I got from my family, I want to give to them. And my wife, she, Jade, Jade's the one that's connected you and I. She's an incredible woman. She's, yeah, she does amazing things. And, I think I'm reminded every day when I look at her by how lucky and fortunate I am to have her. As she would say, like, if she had met me the 10 years prior to when we met, probably would have walked to the other side of the street. And I wouldn't have blamed her. So but beyond that, it's you know, it's the little hacks, you know, like a lot of people, you know, I love the Hubermans, the Hymans, and of this world, and the Breckers, and you know, through my own experimentation, I do a lot of stuff myself, and you know, whether it be cold showers or cold dips in the pool during the winter, whether it be, you know, getting out. I still to this day get out every day, get some sunshine, get the early sun. You know, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. You know,
Hmm.
it's getting that exercise. It's doesn't matter if it's steps, it doesn't matter if it's gym. You know, you mentioned yourself before around the dancing study. You know, it is without doubt the most, not necessarily just dancing, but exercise in general has been shown time and time again to be one of the most effective treatments of anxiety, depression, of many different, you know, mental health disorders. And it's something that's free for everybody. Anybody can do it. You can do it. You just have to put on some shoes. Don't even need to do that. Do it from home.
Yeah.
You know, do it in your lounge room. Like it's, but that the endorphins, the, you know, it's, yeah. So every day it doesn't, you know, and just something that, you know, one of the coaches that I've worked with in the past, to me, because I used to, you know, I put so much weight and stock into my physical training, because in many respects that's my meditation. Like I try and meditate, I'm shit at it. Like I really try hard. I've even bought myself, you know, multiple devices, muses and mendies, and you know, all things trying to help me get better at it. But actually, my best meditation comes in my own physical straining, like through training. But then I do myself an injury. I mean, I'm getting to that age where I go to bed feeling fine and I wake up with a sore hip and a sore shoulder, wondering what on earth has happened. But you know, as I get injuries, it then interferes with my ability to be able to do, you know, my normal structure, you know. And you know, he turned around to me and said, "Hey, stop focusing on what you can't do and focus on what you can do." And I think that's a really powerful lesson to me. So it seems so simple, but when it comes to exercise, you know, if you are somebody who is struggling with, you know, mental challenges, knowing how powerful exercise is, it's not about, you don't have to go to a gym. You don't need to go register and sign up for the gym. Just start doing something. Do 10 squats in your lounge room and be proud of yourself for doing that. And I think it really talks back to what happened when we talked about my baby steps, you know, just going for that walk. You know, it was the exercise. So yeah, exercise is a big thing. Meditation, I mentioned, I'm trying, but sleep is the other thing
Hmm.
that my wife hates it. She's a night owl. And but you know, for me, I'm trying to, having spent so many of my years of my life where I wouldn't sleep for 3, 4 days. Perhaps I'm just trying to make up for that deficit. But I prioritize my sleep as best as I possibly can, because everything's better with a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I enjoy the hell out of my mornings nowadays and love getting up early. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. We'll have to talk about Jade on that one. But speaking of Jade, you know, I connected with her a couple years ago, and she's a powerhouse herself, being an osteopath and a managing director of the Western Region Health, a huge health alliance in Australia. You know, she's obviously, I'm sure, had a big impact on your life. When she came into your life, what was the impact that she's had to help build you into the man you are today?
Goosebumps. Huge. Yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate. Sorry, I get almost a bit emotional thinking about it. Like it's funny, like actually just before meeting Jade, and you know, I bought this, you know, made great apartment in a place called St Kilda here. You know, I was, you know, my, I'm trying to think, you know, early 30s. You know, built and buffed at the gym. I was money in my back pocket, and you know, I was ready to hit the town. I was ready to just have, you know, a great summer, and you know, just play the field.
Mhm.
Um, and then Jade came along, and you know, she could not have been more different to the women I had dated to that time. And look, there's again no discredit to those women that I dated prior. You know, we were all on our separate journeys. They've all done incredibly well. They've all, you know, we would just wrong place, wrong time, toxic to each other. But you know, Jade was so far from that. She was, yeah, like I don't know how really to explain it. Like, I think probably she would say that many men were actually threatened by her, which is why she had been single for so long, because she was such a successful, well, you know, ambitious individual. But I was so motivated by that. I was inspired by it. It made me want to be a better version of myself. And she challenged me to believe in myself and to really, you know, go after the things that I wanted. And, you know, she's also allowed me the opportunity to do that. I'm very fortunate because of, you know, the circumstances, or her circumstances. You know, it did afford me the opportunity to do that. And, you know, for that, I am daily immensely grateful. So yeah, she has, you know, had an enormous positive influence on my life, massive. I can't, words can't really put it into, you know, it can't do it justice.
I'm sure you could go on for days talking about her, man.
I'll put all
It's
your listeners to sleep, but
I mean, it's a fortunate thing because nowadays dating is super hard for many men. There's been a lot of changes socioeconomically with women and men, and just culturally that has led to issues with dating, finances, all the things, right? And so it's amazing to see the relationship that you two do have and how you've built each other up to be both extremely successful. And crediting her for building you into the man that you are today. And I can tell, you know, just seeing in your face, getting to talk about her, and now you also have kids. Um, what is the impact of having kids had on your life? And has that pushed you to go even harder into your purpose and what you're doing?
absolutely. And I might just say with my, again, to your lit, like, if it's not a wife, it's having the right people around you. It's actually choosing and selecting who you spend your most time with. You know, what Jade has been incredible, but I've also had some other great friends along the way, and still do today, that also have been a great driving force. So yeah, look, kids, you know, there's no doubt that that sense of purpose that comes from having kids, it's hard, you know, and anybody who's listening who's got kids, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it is relentless. And you know, I think but at the same time as being relentless, it's incredibly rewarding. And, you know, it's a responsibility that I take very seriously. And with any responsibility, you know, it has a motivating effect. You know, I want to provide for them. I want to protect them. I think the challenge I have is actually overprotecting. You know, I think you know, as I say, I have an amazing relationship with my father now, but growing up, you know, he was very much the disciplinarian. I didn't really have a friendship with him. You know, he was not overly emotionally available. And I've probably overcompensated, you know, for my kids, which is probably, you know, not great either. But yeah, they've been an incredible influence on my life. They make me laugh. You know, they make me realize that I don't take life too seriously. You know, it's important to, yeah, seeing the world through a child's eyes, like through their lens. God, it's great sometimes. Like, it's you forget how incredible the world is. You know, it is a tough place. It really is. And you know, it's relentless and it grinds you. But actually, you know, look at it through a child's eyes, and it's an incredible place. It's a massive playground. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that, you know, for me, I try and hold on to. You know, I really do. And look, there's probably something I haven't touched on, which is why I get emotional talking about Jade too. Like, when Lacey came into this world, has Jade ever told you about her medical, what happened to her? I'm not too sure. Anyway,
That
she
Jade
was,
survived a brain tumor, right?
yeah. So the day after she gave birth to Lacey, our daughter, she presented with stroke-like symptoms, and I checked into the maternity ward. I think I'm the only bloke to have ever checked in as a permanent, as a resident of the maternity ward. Otherwise, Lacey, my daughter, would have been put into ICU, and they transferred my wife down to another hospital, effectively, into the ICU. Poor thing hadn't slept yet since giving birth, and 12 hours later, we got given the news that she had a tumor. There was a growth in her brain that had bled during the giving birth. And that was a really, really tough. Right? We talk about all the other challenges that I've been through in my life. At least those were challenges I felt I had some level of control over. Those were things that, I could, as difficult as it was, I could do something about. That was very much the first time I was confronted with a scenario, a situation that I had no control over. And no matter how hard or how much I wanted to fix it or change it, I couldn't. And so this is rather a dark place to go off the back of your question, but I think it's a powerful part of my story. Lacey is an angel in many respects to Jade and I, because I don't think we necessarily would have known about the brain tumor until it was too late, if it wasn't for the fact that Lacey came along, and when she was giving birth, it had a blood supply, so it swelled and caused those symptoms. So it's funny, things happen, but yeah, I mean, that whole scenario, like as I look back on it, that was probably one of the most difficult things I've had to confront. Now, I remember standing in the shower whilst Jade, was still in the hospital, just thinking, shit, like, I've just had a baby. I've just, my wife might die. Like, what? How am I going to do this on my own? Like, how do I fix? So it was both that fear of the future of, what happens if my wife passes? How do I, do justice to the vision that my wife had? She was the one that she always told me when I first met her. Maybe not when I first met her, that's a bit intense, but early on in our relationship, she told me, we're going to have a baby girl and I'm going to call her Lacey. It was one of the non-negotiables in our relationship. Now, I'm one of 5 boys. I'm one of 12 male cousins. My mother is the last female in our line of the family
Wow.
so 62 years. So when Lacey came along, it was Jade. Jade's, had willed it. So this sense of responsibility was, oh wow. I mean, just standing there, the emotion of going, holy shit, what am I going to do? How much? Oh, look, it was, yeah, a really, really tough period. And look, for your listeners, Jade is absolutely fine. She's one of the lucky ones. 8 out of 10 people who get brain cancer, they do sadly pass. And we were very fortunate. And again, it's one of those motivators of why I've created the brand that I have today. Not suggesting that nutritional supplements could solve or save that sort of thing, but I think it was just, again, the recognition of just how important the brain is in our lives. So yeah, my kids have played a big role in my life, whether it have been helping to discover this brain tumor to helping me see the world in a different lens.
Amazing, man. It's an incredible story, and I'm so happy for both of you overcoming both of your health issues, mental issues. And, as you share it, you say it in a way that almost Lacey coming when she did saved Jade.
Absolutely.
Because you wouldn't have known if she didn't have that hospital experience to have her. So it's almost like a blessing, divine timing, if you will. And through all this struggle, I know whether it was through going through your mental struggles, Jade surviving the brain tumor. I'm also pretty sure Jade told me that you had some family members with dementia. Um, did you find connection greater with God or spirituality throughout a lot of this journey? And do you have a connection at this time in your life?
In short, no. I feel like I'm a terrible in those times I was praying to everything and anything. That's the reality. I think it's in reflection on myself. Spirituality is something that I feel is missing in my life. And, I think we've all got those buckets that we need to fill. And my spirituality bucket is one that needs some TLC, because I do believe in something greater than myself. But it's not something I've, as I say, when it was happening, my God, I was on my knees praying to anybody who would listen. But, once I was all right, it's something I've neglected, but I feel there is a need.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I was just curious because going through something that difficult, I can't even imagine for myself, but if I were to place myself there, I'm sure I would be doing the same of just hoping and praying to anything possible. Now, going through all this, obviously, it's had an impact on what you do now, bringing brain supplements, gut supplements to help people really take power over their health, and really be in control. Um, is this how you rage on in life? Because I see you as someone who embodies the whole name of this podcast of rage on, that raging on can be as simple as a whimper. It can be as simple as I'm not gone yet. And you were at that point, at a low point in your life, that there's, as long as there's a whimper, as long as I could take a step out of my bed. And now you're raging forward with this business that's providing wellness products across the globe. What is the reason or the who that you truly rage for nowadays as a man?
Selfishly, I'm going to say me. And I know that might be controversial in some respects, but I have my responsibilities to my wife and my kids, and they're a critical part of my story, as to my brothers, my parents, and my friends. But I do it for me. I'm there's more that I want to achieve in this world. There's more places I want to visit. There's more things that I want to experience. I think it's, yeah, I rage for me because I've been at the other end and it ain't fun. That's, I rage because I don't want to get back to, I never want to go back there. I never want to be back in that place. And as I say, I think, darkness can be a great motivator to drive you forward. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I rage on for me.
Yeah. And I don't believe it's anything to look down upon, because I do rage for myself as well. The little kid who wasn't heard or was always put down or always yelled at and made to feel incapable and not powerful, that I rage for him. And I rage in the same way I rage for all those other people, boys, girls, men, who were in similar situations, who were disempowered. And I believe you do rage for yourself, but you are also raging for all those other people who uh, maybe we're in similar places, and you're providing them the knowledge and the empowerment through your products and education to take power over their health and their life. So hopefully they don't have to go through similar struggles that you
Yeah,
did.
look, absolutely. Look, when I say I rage on for me, I think, that's my if I'm not raging on for me, then I'm not available to be able to help others on their journey. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, I'm someone that has for a long time in my life put others ahead of myself. That was one of my weaknesses as well. It's always trying to be everything for everyone, please everyone, worrying about trying to be what everybody else wanted to me be. And in many respects, that's what led me to get into a lot of shit in my life. So, raging on is about making sure that I'm investing in myself so that I can be available then to take my learnings, and to your point, then help others. Not, if I can even help one person not
Mm-hmm.
experience what I went through, And look, MyBrainCo, as you know, it's a passion project in many respects for me. Like it's, you know, we are all, I'm sure, maybe that's unfair to mass generalize, but I talk about myself, certainly spent far more time in my life worrying about how I looked on the outside than I ever did about worrying about how I was looking after my brain. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we all spent probably hours doing our hair, doing our various things that we do. But how often in the day do you ever think about what are you doing for your brain, and
Mm-hmm.
noting your brain and the health of your brain. It's the conduit through which you interpret the world around you. It's the lens through which you see and respond to the world. It's, it with when my brain was not when my brain was broken, it was that was one of the darkest times of my life. And through, as I mentioned, not being able to go down that medical path, and then learning about the power of exercise, the power and influence of nutrition, and basically fixing myself, I've come to really understand just how important nutrition can play to the brain. I did all the various testing, whether it be stool tests for the gut brain, whether it was, I was so malnourished, Carl. I was so malnourished. And it doesn't surprise you. I mean, when you take and consume the lifestyle that I was, it leaches everything from your body. Like I'd be up 4 days, and I'd come, knock myself out with a Xanax, sleep for probably 2 days. And then I would come back and I'd eat Boost bars and KFC or Kentucky Fried Chicken, I think, for many of your listeners. Like I was, when I did all my blood tests, I was malnourished. I had deficiencies in vitamin D. I had deficiencies, my testosterone levels were low. So many things were, I undermethylated. I have, MTFHR polymorphisms, which meant, I've got methylation. Yeah, there were so many things that I needed to fix, which were both self-inflicted, but actually were also things that I wasn't aware I was born with, whether, that MTFHR, but things that actually influence in such a big way the way your brain works, the way you think, the way you feel. So yes, I think MyBrainCo is my way. It's one of the ways in which I try and give back. And if, I can help people have build some awareness around the importance of the brain, if I can encourage people to just spend a little bit more time thinking about their brain, because we're certainly not here's a pill, it's going to fix everything. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
We have a team of clinicians that it's education, it's lifestyle, it's recognizing that, the decisions and choices you make every day, they can have a negative or positive influence on your brain. And, then there's the nutritional side of it, and trying to create products that would help people who may or may not have the same scenarios that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's
It's a beautiful mission you guys are on. And, I see it as, I see rage as it's your darkness in action. And that action comes in the form of creation. And that creation is usually the deepest form of love. And so I just see you bringing your deepest darkness into the world through this company and through your products. So it's amazing, man. And I just want to tap into that, because a big thing when I work with men in my programs is, as you discussed, you have to nourish yourself in different ways. It's not just taking the pill, but it's nourishing yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, if you're getting there. So you can really have all these tools in your tool belt, if you will. So you're taking care of all aspects to be at your highest level. Now, for a lot of men, I really focus on in their first 2 weeks working with me is changing up their habits, changing up their diets, and making sure they're aware of how much this can impact their brain and their anxiety and depression and all those things, of just how are you nourishing yourself. But some men don't know it. So since you have all these different products, they're clean label, you show all the ingredients so people know what's going in their bodies, you have sustainable sourcing and very ethical practices. And a lot of men out there might not know that this is impacting them, that they're not getting the right minerals, resources, vitamins. How could a man know or get certain tests to see that this is actually something that's impacting them and to know how to address it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in Australia, it's probably very different to the US. In actual fact, I think in the US, am I right in saying a lot of your listeners are in the US, Carl?
It's a mix,
It's
but yes,
Yeah,
like
okay.
60%
It's going to
US.
be different depending upon which marketplace where you live. But in Australia, it's quite restricted trying to get private lab tests. But look, there are blood tests out there. In Australia, you're probably better off to go find a GP. Hopefully, you've got a GP that's willing to work with you. Unfortunately, a lot of the GPs that I've dealt with over the years, they have such little education through their own their own medical education around nutrition and the importance of these things. So they typically are not well informed. But that said, there are also many GPs, integrative GPs out there who are. So it's trying to find the right GP, because I cannot stress enough the importance of these things in your life. Like at the end of the day, if your cells aren't healthy, you ain't healthy. And you can feed yourself, but your body feeds itself. So there's many different challenges throughout the process to make sure that you are nourishing yourself with what is necessary. But in Australia, it's finding the right GP. In the US, which we've just launched in the US, there are many more available sort of third-party accredited labs that offer various testing kits. I think just getting a nutritional profile done, like you can do a hair analysis, which will tell you your mineral levels. You can do, obviously they're relatively low, unintrusive. You can usually do them from the comfort of your home, or just go down to a place where they do your bloods. But yeah, I recommend and encourage you, go and get your bloods done. Go and check things like your vitamin D levels. Vitamin D, I live in Australia. We've got one of the highest levels of cases of skin cancer. Yet I can tell you that we've got a massive issue with vitamin D deficiency in this country, which is crazy. So, if you're living in the places like the UK, where I used to be from, where you're only getting X amount, so many hours of daylight, and you're spending a lot of that inside, well, you've really got to think about these things. And, the association between vitamin D deficiency and mental health disorders is enormous. Checking your inflammation levels, I think, with things like depression, for a long time, we've approached those things with SSRIs. And look, again, those things work extremely well for some people. But like you said earlier, we have one of the most highly medicated societies here in Australia as well. I think you were mentioning in the US, it is heavily prescribed antidepressants in this country. And I think time and time again, the evidence has shown that for a large majority of people who are prescribed those medications, they're not effective, or the side effects outweigh the benefits. And in actual fact, through nutritional intervention, through lifestyle intervention, they would probably see far better results. So, go and get these things tested. Go and get your vitamin D tested. Go and check your inflammation levels. As I was saying, if I sidetrack myself, inflammation is now being seen to be a major contributor to depression. So whereas SSRIs are all about, trying to rebalance the neurotransmitter levels in the brain, for a lot of people, that might not actually be the cause, or the cause of the problem. In actual fact, it could be inflammation in the brain. Inflammation can extend to the brain from the gut, hence the fact that the importance of looking after the gut. And you can go and get tests to see how efficiently your gut's, functioning. It's not one of the more pleasant tests to carry out, but you can do it in the privacy of your own home. But, get over it. Go get the test done. I'm a great believer of understanding. Until you got to get, I wear Aura rings. I track everything, much to my wife's frustration. To me, treat yourself like your own motor vehicle. You get your motor vehicle serviced every year, and you keep a track of your oil levels and your petrol level. we don't do the same for ourselves. It's really important to go out, get a benchmark of where you sit. So, blood tests for your nutritional content, get a stool test to understand your gut function, check out your inflammation levels. Check you don't have, even if some of these things obviously cost a bit more than others, but go and check whether you've got MTHFR mutations. Like, methylation is such an important part. It's a fancy word. There's no point in getting into the depths of what it means, but many of us have methylation issues, and you would be blown away by just how impactful that can be on your state of mind. So you might be sitting there feeling the way you're feeling, and you're doing all the things that right. You're trying to make all these right step forward, but you're still just not winning. It might not be your fault. It might be something completely outside of your control, which can be quite simply solved through specialized nutrition or supplements. I don't know if that helps, but that's certainly my recommendation. Go and get some tests done.
Yeah. No, you bring up so many good points. I mean, I've been in healthcare as a physio, and in the US, we have a sick care system, and that's because it's more profitable that way, is to take care of people after they're sick, as opposed to what you're pushing for, which is more prevention of checking your blood levels every year and checking all of your systems to see where you are deficient. And that's why I think it's so important to have this conversation, and why I bring it into how I work with men, is that some guys are out there doing all the things. They're doing the cold plunges, going to retreats, reading the self-help books, and all the things, and still feel like crap. And it's like, maybe you got to check where you're deficient. And sometimes that's all it takes. You might not even need me. You might just need one supplement. I can't tell you how much taking magnesium helped me, just magnesium, because 80% of people are deficient in it. And
I'll add that to my list, like massively so.
Yeah, sleep, anxiety, everything. And so sometimes it's just one thing that you need, but everything else, still do it, but check where you're deficient. So amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. And I can't wait to try some of the products that you guys have, because some of them look really great. And before we finish up today, I just like to finish off with some rapid fire questions and then a final question for you. So just some quick answers. Number one, what's one non-negotiable activity you do daily to keep you at your best?
Cold shower.
Right on, brother. Right on. If I could do a cold plunge here, I would. I don't have one, but luckily my shower's cold as well. Right on. What food, we all have to have our cheat days and stuff. What food is your guilty pleasure?
Man, I'm such a pizza guy. Love my pizzas. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm originally from New York, so I'm privileged there. I'll say
And I've
that.
had some amazing pizzas in New York, at Central Station. Those
Oh yeah.
huge slices. Oh my God, so
Oh,
good.
you're talking about roses. I know
Yeah.
roses. Amazing. What brings you the most joy in life right now?
My kids.
Amazing. And what is one thing very few people know about you that you wish they did know?
That I wish they didn't know or did know.
That you wish that they did know?
Ooh, wow. Probably got me there, Carl. Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Wish that I did.
Yeah, I just feel that for many of us, there's things that we have inside that we wish people knew about us, but we either don't want to share it, or we I don't know, just wish they knew that it would be an easier way for them to connect with us, maybe.
How much I care. I know that sounds crazy, but I just wish people, when it comes to my brand, to my products, to my life in general, my friends, yeah, how much I care.
I love it, man. I love it. And I can tell you care based on the way you carry yourself and how you've shared with me today openly. So I appreciate it, man. One last question before we finish up. If at this moment, this very moment, I hit a button and your microphone would speak to the entire world and everyone could understand you, everyone spoke English for this moment, what message would you share with every human being at this current moment in society in 2024 that you believe they need to hear?
Don't give up. The future's yours. You can control the future. You can make it however you want to make it. Just don't give up.
Amazing, brother. I love it. And I think that's something a lot of people do need to hear. So I appreciate the message. Appreciate everything that you've shared with me today, Ed. What's next for you, man? What's next for you, and where can people find you, as well as get a hold of some MyBrainCo supplements?
Yeah, look, I appreciate that. What's next for me? Well, this was my first ever podcast. So, maybe I'll do more of these. So talking about anxieties, this is, as I mentioned to you, I like to be the guy behind the curtain instead of in front of the curtain, but you've inspired me, you've motivated me. Maybe I can get out and talk to my journey to a few others if it would help others. MyBrainCo, we obviously are very available here in Australia. We're probably one of the leading, if not the leading, brain-centric supplement brand here. But we have just launched in the US, so we're available with local distribution in the US. We're predominantly online, so head to mybrainco.com or us.mybrainco.com. And look, if they can reach out to me through the website as well, or any of my clinical support team. We're very responsive and very happy to help people and guide people in the decision-making process.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. Yeah, the company I saw has over 7,000 five-star reviews. I can't wait to get my hands on some. I take some probiotics and some kefir yogurt daily, but I do really want to try the gut health product and see what difference it makes for myself. Ed, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for opening so vulnerably and sharing with me, especially for your first podcast. I really appreciate it. And I see your heart in everything that you do. And I see how much you do care. So I appreciate you sharing with me. Thanks so much. Ed Scott, everyone.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it. Thank you.